Hello YouTubers, welcome back to my channel. So, this is not an unboxing video. This is a very different series of videos I'm going to be doing. I am still doing my unboxing videos, have no fear, for the two of you who actually watch them. But this is quite a different series. The eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that I've got a new playlist. Yes, I do. Cat decided to say hello. How unusual, yeah? You want to keep, yeah, you want to get to, you want a piece of the action, yeah? Yes, this is, this is quite a different series of videos. I've not really done video blogging, primarily because I tend to be quite a private person. So it's just not something that I've ever thought about doing. You know, I've been a YouTuber for a number of years now, since about 2016, I think. And I've got 300 videos, mostly unboxing videos. And I do them because it's fun, you know. I never expect lots of people to watch them. But anyway. So this is actually going to be a series of video blogs. Yes, it is. And it's not going to be about cats. Yeah, so the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that I've got a new playlist up on my YouTube channel about grief journey. And there's like a little video that was played at a funeral of someone who was very, very important to me, who was my mum. So my mum died a couple of months ago on the 28th of February 2023. So I think when it comes to grief, you know, obviously it is a journey and it's not one necessarily that has a conclusion to it, and perhaps shouldn't. You know, I think, you know, in general, we do expect our parents to die at some point, unless the other, even more horrific thing happens and a child dies before the parents, and nobody really wants that. So, you know, we live our lives knowing that one day we're likely to lose our parents. Now, my mum was only 19 years older than me. So I expected to have her around until I was in my 60s. In the event, I'm in my early 50s, and my mum was only 71 when she died. So Rich, in this day and age, is quite young, I think, in many respects. You know, we don't really expect old people to die until they're in their 80s these days. But she had issues with her health for a while. So I think in this in this video, I shall give a quick description of my mum and what happened, and then let's see what goes on from there. This is totally unscripted, so could be rambling forever and boring you all shitless. But anyway, so my mum and I got on very well, like most mothers and daughters. Well, I say like most, like a significant number of mothers and daughters. I think our relationship blossomed once I left home. So I left home for university, like a lot of people do. And, you know, we got on each other's tits when we were living together. But once there's a little bit of distance and, you know, we saw each other regularly and had lots of fun, our relationship blossomed and I became very close to my mum. You know, she was she was very supportive. We spoke to each other every day on the phone. You know, during the pandemic, we started doing the FaceTime thing, spoke to each other twice a day. When she started to get a bit frail, I asked her to send me a message every morning and evening so I know she hadn't fallen over and broken something. You know, that kind of thing. I was always trying to look after her in my own way, you know, despite the fact that there was always some distance between us. So I moved to London initially, and then I moved to Germany 5 years, well, just under 5 years ago. But I always tried to be there for her. And She had a number of operations. So my mum suffered from both osteo and rheumatoid arthritis, which meant she undergoed a number of operations to try to alleviate those issues. So, she had a hip operation in her mid-50s, which is really young to have hip, as in a hip replacement. In her mid-50s, she had number of operations on her knees. She had one of her feet broken and all her bones reset because it turned out, she had serious issues with one of her feet for a while. So I always went up because my mum lived in the northeast of England. So I often went up when she had operations and stuff and tried to support her. And even when I lived abroad, even when I started to live abroad, I tried to visit her as often as I could, given the issues, with distance. And when I moved here, within a couple of years, the pandemic happened, which was always very awkward. But we were in touch almost constantly. And when I did get to see her, we went to the pub pretty much every visit, which was always lots of fun. Really enjoyed each other's company. She always managed to attract some weird old man for some reason. That became a bit of a running joke. He used to go like the bathroom or something, come back, and she was sat, and she'd managed to attract some weird old man. So that was a thing. Oh god, she was attracting weird old man again. And she loved her cats. She loved animals in general. When I was growing up, we had an imaginary of all sorts of animals, mostly cats though. And again, it became a bit of a running joke that just not to give her any rodents, because I had a couple of hamsters and not a guinea pig, a gerbil. And I looked after those because if I left them in Mum's non-capable hands, she used to kill them. And I had no idea how she managed to do that, but I used to have some friends in the States, and I went on a couple of holidays, come back, and rodent died. I had no idea how she managed to do it. Look at the rodent, she killed it. Not intentionally, obviously. It was just, I don't know what she did to them. But anyway. So, at one point, she left the family home with stairs and things, and both my brother and I had moved out anyway. I think it's worth pointing out that my dad died a very long time ago at the age of 36, so she was a widow for most of her life, well, a good half of her life, really. Well, I think most of her adult life would be fair to say that she was a widow, and she never remarried, didn't want to, which is fair enough. And when she did get a bit more frail, a bit more disabled, she used a rollator for a long time. And eventually she did move into one of those old people's flats where there was a lot, the lifeline thing, so she could press a button, and people used to come and check that she was all right. And there was a community centre there. And when she was retired, when we, for a long time we didn't have a lot of money, and a mum basically, she had lots of dead-end jobs, basically. Supermarket assistant, supermarket. She used to work in a clothing store for a long time. Dinner lady, cleaner, cigarette factory. She hated that. But basically anything that brought home money to support her family, basically she did it. And we were scraping the pennies together for a long time. But thankfully, by the time she was retired, for a number of reasons, she was actually reasonably well off, which is really nice. And for the 15 or so years she was in this flat with the lifeline thing, she was, she went to Slimmer's World, because she retired quite early. Because she was always a large lady. But if she went to Slimmer's World, lost a fair amount of weight. I think it was 6 stone at some point. She did really well. And Women's Institute. She was also very, she was very much a social butterfly. she used to go to this community centre and play card games. She loved her card games. And and I was really, really happy because I felt that for the first time in her life, she was comfortably off. She was really enjoying herself. She had lots of friends. Then, and the pandemic happened, and of course, suddenly we are locked into our own homes. I was in Germany by then, as I mentioned before. My brother in a neighbouring town in the northeast of England, and so we were all like locked away, couldn't see each other. But we did FaceTime. My mum, she was not very technologically with it, really. She never used a computer her entire life, had no need to, and didn't even know how to switch one on, basically. She had a smart TV, totally wasted on her, no idea. The number of times I went to house, this is Netflix, this is how to get Netflix, this is how to get YouTube. Oh yeah, I understand that, and then never happened. But anyway. But she managed FaceTime, and that was brilliant, particularly once I moved to Germany, because, it was a bit more difficult to see her on a frequent basis. So we spoke to each other once a day, even twice a day on FaceTime. And it definitely became a regular thing with myself, my brother and my mum during the pandemic. The three of us every day speaking to each other at least twice a day on Facebook, keeping in touch, checking we were okay. And and of course during that time, because she was locked in her own flat, quite lonely, missing her friends, chatting to my brother and I twice a day was fine, but before then she was a social butterfly. She gained a lot of weight again, which is unfortunate. And she had the rheumatoid and osteoarthritis, which obviously progressively got worse as she got older. And then something happened in July 2021. So she started complaining of really bad knee. And, and her, to the extent that she was finding it really difficult to get up and just do things around the house. Now, for a long time, during the pandemic, I started doing her shopping for her online. She paid for it, but I spoke to her online saying, I got the Morrison's online shopping open now, what do you want? So, did all that. And then she was finding it really difficult to cook for herself. So I started doing like some fresh, the fresh ready meals in Morrison's for her and stuff like that for a couple of weeks, thinking that hopefully she'll get better soon. And then at least that way she could just like stick the food in the microwave rather than, have to hover around the kitchen for a while. But it didn't get any better. She spoke to a doctor. Doctor came to her house and effectively dismissed the whole thing. Basically said, we're just a fat old lady with arthritis, so deal with it. Which is not very helpful, particularly when, it became very much worse over a very short period of time. So there was clearly something wrong. And dismissing it as fat old lady with arthritis was really not helpful. And I remember being very angry about that, saying, go back and push them to see what the heck is going on here, because this is not usual. My mum was in pain for most of her adult life because of the issues she had. But this was not helpful. They had to do something else. Anyway, middle of the night, about 11 o'clock one night, I was already in bed. And then she calls me, which is unusual, because normally she'd just do like, hey, I'm going to bed, good night. But she called me, so I picked up the phone, and she said that she did a FaceTime thing. And she said she's trying to get up to go to bed. And what happened is that instead of she really bad pain in her leg with the dodgy knee, and she fell back on the sofa and she couldn't get up. And what had happened, we didn't know that quite yet, but what had happened, we worked out later, is that when she got up, instead of her knee going forward, like, behaving normally, what happened, it went backwards. So there's clearly something wrong with the joint. Went backwards and it snapped her femur. So the femur is a very long bone between the knee and the hip, and it's the biggest bone in your body. and had a very, very serious break. I didn't know that at the time. All she knew that she was in a lot of pain and she couldn't get up. So she did the buzzer thing, and they came round and realised they couldn't get her up. So they called an ambulance, and the ambulance came about 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that, and took her to the hospital. I mean, I will say that although I'm not impressed by NHS GPs, I think the whole thing with her being in hospital and stuff, once you got into hospital, the NHS is really good. It has a lot of bad press, particularly abroad. And there are certainly elements to it that require attention, like having to wait from 11 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning for an ambulance just isn't on. I mean, obviously she was, she could have been bleeding to death at that point, because that's a really bad break. And there could have been internal bleeding there. But once she, and the GP was seriously not impressive. And I'm not impressed with NHS GPs in general. But, or indeed the GPs here in Germany, to be honest. But anyway, regardless of that, once she was in the hospital, her hospital visits, the way she was treated in NHS hospital, Darlington Memorial Hospital, where she spent most of the time. I mean, she was in hospital, stunning, really good. So that's just a thumbs up there. But anyway, rambling. Got her to hospital, and that's when we found out that she'd broken her leg. Real shock, did not expect that at all. So Mum was in hospital for a good month or so. We were really hoping that she'd get home eventually after some rehab to her own home again. Really unfortunately, I don't know why, but her 2 remaining cats died very soon after she broke her leg. That's a bit sad, but particularly as one of them wasn't very old, to be honest. I don't know what happened there, but she was hoping to get home. And I suppose at this point, I mean, a long time ago, my mum used to smoke, but she'd quit quite some time ago, about 20 years beforehand. But also it had sort of like predisposed her to chest infections. Every time she had a cold, she had chest infection. That had waned over a while. So after a while, as she got over the smoking, the chest infections become fewer. But it's always been a worry of mine. And I think once an elderly person has become less less mobile, things like chest infections become a real issue. And she did have a chest infection once. She was in the hospital with a broken leg, and she got over that. And I think she had a urinary tract infection as well, and she got over that. And eventually, after a month, they said, you need some rehab. So we were still under the impression that she was going to get home. And they took her to a nursing home. And this is a nursing home I knew quite well, because when I was very much younger than I am now, one of my first jobs was actually as a care assistant in this nursing home. It's a private one, it's very nice. And she was there for the first initial 12 weeks or so under NHS care, so she had everything paid for her through the NHS. It's kind of how it works. But I think during that time they worked out that she was not going to get home. She started having edema in her legs, and it's clear that she was never going to be mobile again to get home. So after having a chat with a social worker, it was decided that she was going to stay in the nursing home. And she, it was a bit disappointing, obviously, for a number of reasons. I didn't really want her to be in a nursing home. I always thought that I'd look after her in some way. But there it was. And it was kind of weird in a way, because, for me, kind of like, once the family home or the parental home kind of disappears, you feel as if you lost something already. And and I always felt sad that she lost her independence, but she was okay. She was happy enough. She understood. She was obviously not lonely at that point. And she'd she got involved in all the social events in the nursing home. And she was actually really, really popular. with the nursing staff, and this is something that became very apparent to both my brother and myself during the funeral, because there was a busload of them come to the funeral, um, which was really humbling in a way. You know, we didn't expect so many of them to come, you know, because they said, oh, you know, she was very popular, we'd like to know when the funeral is and when it is. And it, you know, her funeral wasn't in Darlington, it was a neighbouring town of Bishop Auckland for reasons that aren't very interesting. But because perhaps they won't come because it's not in Darlington. But they came. They all came, a whole busload of them. It was amazing. But anyway, he was obviously very popular. And she stayed there. I went to see her as often as I could. It was a bit tricky, of course, because of travel restrictions during the pandemic, etc. And you know, and then something happened in November 2022. She eventually got COVID. So this was effectively the beginning of the end. She was in bed for a week. She wasn't that badly off, I don't think. You know, obviously by then she'd had 2 vaccinations and the boosters as well. But she was in bed for a week, and then she recovered. But then she got a chest infection, and this was like early December. So I was actually in the UK. I was doing some work-related thing, and then in London, and then I went up to visit my mum and my brother in North East, and then the idea was then to go back down south to see my partner who's in Brighton. And then during my visit up north, we got a call from the nursing home saying, your mum's been rushed to hospital with a chest infection. I thought, oh Christ, you know. And this cause of chest infection was on the back of having COVID. And so we called her up. She seemed to be okay, not super okay, but you know, we was going to get it sorted out and stuff. And then we got another call from her really late. She's seriously in a lot of pain. I'm having an operation. I'm really unwell. And then we got a call from her doctor. I think it was her the person who's going to do the anaesthetic. A lovely lady. It was quite late at night, and I remember my brother and I staring basically in horror on his mobile phone, because they're basically saying she's got to have an emergency operation. She might not make it effectively because of her comorbidities. And the operation was to repair a hernia. So what happened? I mean, she'd had this herniatus hernia for a long time. And it wasn't repaired. She could have been repaired, but it wasn't. Primarily because at the time her GP had said that it was so bloody big that there was never going to be an issue with it. But she'd been doing lots of coughing due to the chest infection. And because she'd been doing lots of coughing, what happened is that it popped into her diaphragm, her intestines, and they become strangulated. So really painful. Emergency operation, clearly, because, you know, it's going to die unless they sorted it out. And, you know, but she made it though. And not only did she make it, she didn't need to be ventilated. She woke up she woke up and was breathing fine on her own straight after the surgery. They took her to intensive care, obviously. But she was fine. I mean, she still had a sudden chest infection, but she survived the operation. So I thought, oh, thank goodness for that. You know, worst is over, basically. So I went to see her the next day because I was due to go down to Brighton to see my other half. And, you know, she was fine. We were told that she was due to go to a normal ward, and she'd recovered really well, strong lady, etc. So, you know, she'd given us all a scare, but apparently she was okay. So, but then she was in hospital for a month. She'd got urinary tract infection, was still fighting the bloody chest infection. At some point got sepsis, not surprising really, given the infections going on, and she fought her way through that. That happened in, I was going to went to see her again at Christmas. And she looked really unwell with the sepsis, rather obviously. But she fought her way through that. She recovered, and she eventually got home to the nursing home on the 12th of January. I think, oh, thank God for that. She's at home. She hated being in hospital, such relief, etc. And she spent a good month at home. And I was calling her every day. And I was a bit concerned. I started to get a bit concerned like early February. Because sometimes, she said that she wasn't eating, she wasn't very hungry. Sometimes she was sleeping a lot. And there was the odd occasion where she sounded a bit confused on the phone. So I was a bit worried about that. But the last time I called her, I think was like the 24th of February, I think. And, she was in good spirit. She said she had a chest infection, and we knew that she had. But it was on antibiotics. She felt fine. She was improving. Okay, good. And we had a good hour on the phone. It was great. Had a nice conversation. And then the next morning, my brother called saying she'd been rushed to hospital. We didn't quite know what's happening. So the nursing home basically said, your mum's gone to hospital. They didn't tell us why she'd gone to hospital, it's just that she had. And, and I remember a couple of days before that, I had a conversation with a close work colleague. So, because she asked me how my mum was. And I goes, well, she's okay, but she keeps getting these sodding infections. And I don't know her till last year. And then when I heard that she was going to hospital again, I thought, oh crap, maybe this is it. Because she hadn't been as well as she could have been recently. And after 36 hours, I did eventually call her, thinking, are they going to call us to tell us what the fuck's going on? And eventually I got hold of the hospital myself. Because I figured, well, she can't be dead or anything, because they would have called my brother straight away. Because he was literally just next of kin because of me being abroad. So I called him eventually myself, because she's got a chest infection. She's on oxygen, but she's fine. She's eating breakfast. She's set up. She's talking. And I'm thinking, okay, grand. And this was on Thursday. This was Thursday morning. Unfortunately, because she wasn't really with it when she was rushed to the hospital, she hadn't had a mobile phone with her, so I couldn't call her. But my brother went to see her the following Monday, the 27th of February. And he said she had a rough night the night before, but was fine. She was on oxygen, but, by that time, we were so used to mum being on oxygen, it wasn't a shock anymore. And she seemed to be in good spirits. He spoke to her for an hour. He was going to go home and he was going to go to the nursing home, get her mobile phone so I could talk to her later in the week. He seemed quite happy. Anyway, apparently that night she had another really rough night. And my brother called me, I think it was like 10 o'clock the next day, saying, Mum's taken a turn for the worse. She's not very well. She's on the ventilator. And the message at that point is that she was on the ventilator, and the doctor's going to call later, because I was hoping she was going to respond to treatment. And at that point, I thought I need to get back to the UK, because clearly, this is like very serious now. And then, unfortunately, a couple of hours later, Stephen, my brother, called me again to say that she passed. So apparently they threw everything at her, including the kitchen sink, but it didn't work. My mum did have a do not resuscitate order, which I completely understand. And I think when it comes to like trying to resuscitate people, you'd be amazed how infrequently that works. And there are repercussions to people who have been resuscitated as well. So I completely understand that, particularly in Mum's case, with with her being quite frail by then. So that's basically the story of Mum and how she died. So as I said, she died on 28th of February 2023 it's now been a couple of months. We've had the funeral, and you know, after the initial shock, you know, this is very So as I say, you know, with these blogs, these video blogs, I'll talk through certain things about, you know, how one reacts and what happened after the initial aftermath of a death. So I think I'll do that in the next video. You know, how we felt, how exhausting it is to try to sort out a funeral and all the other crap that goes on after somebody dies when you're almost non-functional. You know, I think that was really hard. You know, I think at the time my brother and I decided it would be a fantastic business opportunity for someone. You know, when somebody dies, you know, you really are not at your best. And then to suddenly find that you have to deal with all the shit that you just don't want to feel. You've never done it before, clearly, because and now you're having to navigate through all this crap when your brain just isn't functioning particularly well. You know, you can get like a business opportunity, like, hey, your relative has died. If you give us £500, we'll sort it out, and then you just come for the funeral. That'd be amazing. It's a fantastic business opportunity, because seriously, the very last thing you want to do when somebody has died is to sort out that. But I'll talk about that in the next video, and then see what goes on from that. So I think, you know, hopefully this will be helpful for me personally, and also helpful for anybody else who stumbles upon these videos. Because, you know, unfortunately, grief is something that comes to all of us. You know, we all are going to lose loved ones at some point. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. I know it's been like 32 minutes and I'm probably bored you all shitless. But if you do want to come back for the next instalment, that will probably be in a week's or so time. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.